Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Jack Myers.
How about a round of applause for our host? This is an exciting panel and a really interesting time for us to be meeting and having this conversation, and for iMedia be doing this. I think the Alamo metaphor is actually a pretty interesting one. I'm not sure who's the forces of Santa Ana and who are, you know, Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and Sam Houston. Those of us in New York, Sam Houston. But
I wonder how many hexabytes of data they created.
How many exabytes of data they created, exactly. But I have a feeling in this room that you guys are inside the Alamo and you're surrounded by except for you, Suzie, you're the spy in the, in the hen house.
All right.
And
the fox in the hen house.
Fox in the hen house. Literally the fox in the hen house. So, sorry. The timing is particularly interesting because we're at a moment in time where the whole focus on video is so intense, and the agencies are really struggling and working hard to try to figure out organizationally and within the pre-existing silos how to reorganize, focus, direct more money, more attention, more focus out to the digital video world. And that's really an interesting time. I've forecast that by 2020, only 30% of digital video dollars will be going to online originated video content. 70% will be going to the broadcast, to the video distribution, the nonlinear distribution of the broadcast and cable networks. So the integration of the traditional television business models with the digital business models are a huge issue. We've got, as we heard a little bit yesterday, Intel, we've got LG, Motorola. Google has bought Motorola Mobility, which includes the set-top boxes, which as of now, unless they sell it, includes the data inside the set-top boxes of 50% of the cable boxes out there. So there's a lot of dynamics in our industry right now with different companies all looking at the distribution of video and the revenue models behind that video, both subscription revenues as well as advertising revenues. And advertising revenues are obviously our focus and topic here today. So if I can, what I'd like to do is just kind of set the table for our conversation by asking you each to describe your current role and function inside of your agency. Then we're going to get into some really interesting topics around currency, around organization and structure, around the issues that you have with the digital online video community. And that's not just online and mobile, it includes the on-demand, includes products like TiVo and the interactive television. Stacy, let me not forget to put in a plug, it includes social TV. And you each received a copy of Stacy's book. Stacy, I hope you'll be here for a little bit after. And if you have your
signing
book,
autograph.
we'll have book signings. So it adds to the value of the book to get the autograph for future reference. But the ability, Stacy, of you to put this book out in such a timely fashion, and it's such an important topic. And something that, as you say, social TV, but the book is really about social video and the distribution of content across. And so we'll get into those topics as well. So there's so many different things we can be talking about today, so many different ways, directions we could be taking this conversation. But what I hope we can really get to are the issues that are relevant for both the buyers and the sellers in this room, and how we integrate across multiple platforms successfully and effectively in the future. So, Stacy, if we can start with you, just kind of tell us the current structure within your organization.
So, at Hill Holliday, I oversee all the national broadcast buying, as well as the direct response buying. But definitely my role has evolved over the last several years. I also lead the Strategic Media Partnerships group at the agency, which handles all cross-channel partnerships that we create with media companies. So working across media disciplines, based on account, different people work on those projects and lead those negotiations. I also am on our Beacon team, which Holliday has started the Beacon Group, which is an opportunity for ad startups to come, and we play an advisory role and work with startups and advise them on how to work with agencies, how to position their products and sell their products, and how we can create some opportunities for our clients. And then most recently with social TV, you know, I work very closely with Mike Prue, who leads our social media practice. And together, he and I are really looking at television from more of an experience standpoint. How do people experience TV and creating opportunities that capture how viewers want to interact with this content. So not just from a broadcast buying standpoint, but what kind of content is out there around television programs, and how can he and I create programs that capture how people are experienced across platforms.
We'll come back to some of those points. Jackie?
It's interesting because there's a lot of similarities between agencies, as we know, and then there are points of differentiation as well. At Starcom, we, a number of years ago, went to an activation model whereby client teams are really trying to think about how they're activating against consumers and getting outside of the silos. I do work in the group and help lead the group that runs our national video buying, but that video buying does include some environmental video pieces now, like cinema, and we're moving slowly into more of the digital out-of-home spaces where there's a lot of national video to buy. I work very closely with the folks who are running our digital teams, and we are pushing out new models for how the activation team should think about how to go reach and have the consumer experience our brand, irregardless of what platform that brand might be on.
And Maureen?
Yeah, so currently at Optimedia, my primary responsibility is national broadcast, so that takes up a large majority of my time. But that would include anything that has cross-platform sponsorship. So if we're doing any marketing deals with any networks, that would include any program that falls within that cross-platform sponsorship. We also would oversee any online video content that comes along with any broadcast partners. So that's something that that's how we're currently operating. You know, we may continue to evolve, as Jackie said, as we're trying to reach consumers. If we're trying to reach moms, if we're trying to reach young females, we will look towards content across any platform that can help us reach those consumers. So we're not currently there right now, but that seems to be where we want to evolve to at some point down the road. You know, but the primary activation is really, you know, again, with broadcast content and how that lives across multiple platforms.
Maureen, if I can put you on the spot a bit to talk about your colleague at Zenith, John Nitty, who came up out of the digital space and just took over all video, and how that organization is differing from the Optimedia.
Yeah, well, currently the way that they're moving towards is that model of John would oversee all activation, and that could include everything from TV to digital to print, local, et cetera. So that is sort of the model that they want to go for. It's going to take time to actually get there because there's a lot of training that's going to be needed. It's going to take a long time to really get those teams in a place that can actually go to market and activate that way. So he currently is overseeing that, and I think, like I said, it's going to be an evolution over time to actually really go to market that way. And they're going to be taking some steps in this year's upfront, some initial steps to get there, but it will take some time to really train people and learning all the different media and being able to one person to activate everything is, you know, kind of an overwhelming task, but that's kind of what the model is going to be.
When you say time, do you mean 6 months? Do you mean 18?
I think it's going to be more like 18 months.
Okay, so the next 1.5 to 2 years is when you think the capability will be there?
I think so. I think it's going to take at least a year or so to get up and running in that way.
Thank you. Chris? Chris Magel. I manage national broadcast at the U.S. And, you know, I'm somebody who's always sort of had a foot in the traditional world and a foot in the digital world. I know a lot of folks in the crowd and have been, been a supportive of a holistic video approach for probably, you know, for 8 to 10 years. Within Initiative, we are structured in a way that I partner up with our digital leaders right now. For example, going into this upfront, we're sort of myself and some folks in the digital group are acting as thought leaders for the agency to try to encourage all the strategic leads on the business to start to take a more holistic approach and look at video across all platforms. Like some of you guys said, we do include the place-based video and out-of-home cinema video in our national broadcast purview. And with digital right now, we're partnering up with the digital leads.
Thanks. Suzie, there's been a lot of talk about the newfronts and the new front. And a lot of confusion about what exactly is happening in a couple of weeks with the new fronts. Can you describe what exactly is happening and what the goals and purposes of it are?
Yeah, so I'm Suzie Reider. I work for Google and YouTube. And what we're doing is from April 19th to May 2nd in New York, there are founding partners, Hulu, AOL, MSN, Yahoo, and Google. And we are all going to be showcasing our content. So it's looking at our content slates and all of our programming. Each of those founding partners will have a big event that will happen sometime between April 19th and May 2nd. I think in an ideal state, if we had gotten started earlier, this kind of kicked off at CES this year, and we went into a frantic zone to try and pull this off by May. Ideally, it would be contained within 1 week, but it's not in year one. So over the course of this 12 days, think of it a little like Advertising Week or Internet Week in New York. There will be a lot of activity, and then there is one day which the Digitas Newfront event is happening, and that's an opportunity for them to bring in their clients and for their clients to see content sponsorship opportunities, and I think that's on April 16th.
And why did you feel the need to do this at the same time as the broadcasting cable network upfronts, as opposed to any time during the year? What's the compulsion to do it right now?
The thought about doing it now is that you want to do it before the money's spent. So you need to do it sometime in the spring, and we weren't physically able to get off the ground in the February-March timeframe, so that's why it's spring. But I think we do need to be, digital and content needs to be in the same planning cycle as decisions are being made about what essentially content and shows to invest in.
Do you agree with
Well, the reality is a lot of planning is done later in the year. We are forcing planning cycles to happen in May to align with the upfront one. At least I can only speak to the Optimedia clients. In a perfect world, they would plan later in the year. So ideally, most of our digital media isn't planned until later in the fourth quarter. The print, out-of-home, et cetera, isn't planned until much later. We force planning cycles early on to align with the broadcast upfront. So, to your point, if you want the TV money, I understand that, but the reality is a lot of it, you have time to really think about digital for a while, quite honestly. When the budgets are more realistic, they have better sight of what their product launches are, they have better sight of their flighting. We make a lot of guesses in the upfront, and in some ways you're better off waiting until there's better sight of what's actually going on.
I think from a buyer perspective, sometimes you're better off waiting until there's better insight into what's going on.
Yeah, I think everybody would be better off waiting. But, from a visibility standpoint, I think you're doing the right thing. Frankly, there's a ton of conversation going on right now that's been started by the commitment that your company, has put forth towards creating original content. It's created a larger conversation because TV everywhere is sort of starting to now percolate and become something that networks have to make some major decisions about how they distribute their content. And so all of us are talking to our clients about a video approach. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have events that you're showcasing your content, which is a learning opportunity for clients and for agencies. I think the timing's right. It's a pain in the ass because we were already pretty damn busy at that time. But from a visibility standpoint, it makes sense. I mean, you might get ignored a little bit more if you waited to be more in line with the planning cycle. And, I think there are some clients, if the conversation is really pushing them in the right direction, there are some clients that might shift some money in the broadcast upfront, although it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, and I think we all know that.
I think there's 50 strategic reasons to do it when we're doing it, and 50 strategic reasons to go at a completely other time or not to.
One thing that I think is really powerful about doing it now is it does remind everybody that as ABC makes an announcement that they're going to be selling differently and they're going to be they've taken their content to other platforms, but now they want to talk about selling it with television. I think it's important to remember that when you move to the digital space, there is a larger competitive set you have to consider. You should start thinking about video in a way that is holistic across platform and maybe even platform agnostic at the start to make sure you think about, well, I can buy Revenge online, or I can buy Odessa that we saw yesterday, or there are lots of things to think about when you're thinking about content and not just pigeonhole yourself to certain things the way they've been done because they've always been done that way. We have to think about a larger competitive set.
Yeah, I agree with what these guys are saying. I think from a timing standpoint, to understand the content that's available, to have it in front of both the television and the digital buyers there together, I think you're going to see you know, the TV and the digital community coming together for these new fronts and being there together to evaluate what's going on. But I don't think that there's a need for it to have to be purchased at the same time as the TV cycle. So understanding the planning cycle and wanting to be there and in the consideration set as the broadcast upfronts are being planned, I think it makes sense and should all be planned at the same time. But the buying cycle does not need to be the same.
This is also year one, right? So year one, we're going to learn a lot and we're going to get a lot of feedback. And I think the founding partners, had we gone at it on our own and started in August of last year, I think there's a lot that we would have done differently. And one of the things would have been to put together an advisory board of people like you to help direct us as we were trying to figure out how to get this done. But I think it is important that we do something.
It's never too late to create that advisory board. Let's talk about the content and the difference in content. You mentioned the $100 million that YouTube is investing in.
Towards marketing the content. They always point that out.
And, well, and that's...
Clarify that?
Not spending on the content.
There are significant, what I'll call material investments in content and also in marketing. So for the first time ever, YouTube is actually putting some wood behind our content and promoting it. So you will see campaigns, ad campaigns launching, directing users the same way there's tune-in and promo spots for the new season of Desperate Housewives or Californication. You're going to see that for our content.
So some of the arguments, not arguments, but points in context is that while you're putting 100 to 200 million behind programming and marketing, and others are certainly investing, the broadcasting cable networks are investing $3 billion a year in program development, not even in the cost of production of the programs that are on the air. So what I'd like to get into a bit is how you differentiate the content that you're looking at between long-form content that's broadcasting cable-centric, content that's now being taken out across multiple platforms, the professional content that's being developed by everyone from Hearst and Condé Nast and Martha Stewart, Funny or Die, and others, to the snacking content that's user-generated. And how are you looking at it in terms of valuation, context, and how are your clients looking at it? And you can, whoever wants to jump in, go ahead and start the conversation.
I think,
there's the content, I think you have to think about professionally produced often versus user-generated sometimes. That's going to be a division at times. But I think also these content buckets live in buckets of what kind of audience you're trying to reach or what your campaign objectives are. So when you look at the full episode stuff that comes from the networks, a lot of that is as broadly targeted as the television networks themselves, maybe a little younger, maybe a little more upscale, but they don't offer a ton of opportunity to segment the audiences within what they sell to you. At the same time, you're looking at the YouTube channels, for example, or some of the other players in the space that you mentioned, are creating lots of different genres of content that maybe are more narrow and sort of concentrating on different segments. So you can segment audiences through content and context. But also a lot of these web-originated players offer a lot deeper targeting capability and data overlay capability. So you think about it in that way. If you have a more performance-driven campaign, you're gonna lean towards players that can help you really squeeze out the waste and drive a greater performance against certain KPIs. Again, there's different things you can do with video, and there's different things you can do with different kinds of TV as well. It's all about the role of what you're looking for, and sometimes it's a mix. Sometimes you're looking for a little broad exposure. Sometimes you're looking for exposure only in super high quality content that's extremely engaging and can elevate the brand. And sometimes you're looking to focus very specifically on a very narrow audience, and you can do that with different types of TV and with different types of online video.
I agree with Chris that you have to start with the objective. I think actually we try to even start one step back from that, which is what type of experience do we want the consumer to have with our brand, with our messaging, and with the content that it's going to be in. And I think that really does help to break down this long-form, short-form issue. There's the perception that, I don't know where it's been created, but it's been created that short-form isn't as valuable as long-form, or long-form is more valuable than short. I'm not sure that that's the right perception. I mean, certainly there's a lot of really valuable short-form content that is absolutely still professionally produced, high quality. I mean, when you're looking even from a broadcast network perspective, they're doing a lot more with their news properties, and they're having short-form content that's giving consumers what they want to see, and it's absolutely similar to what they're putting on in long-form from a scripted perspective. So I think that that's a problem that we have set up this issue between long-form and short-form. I don't really think that that should be what it's about.
Yeah, I think you can look at it a couple of different ways. There's not really one answer, because it will depend on the client's objectives, as you guys have said. And some of our clients only want low CPM ad networks. They want really efficient video, and that's where they want to play. They don't want to pay the high CPM. They don't want to pay for that. That's really their objective, and that's what they want. I think other clients have said, we want to look at video holistically. So what are we not getting from television, whether that's short form, long form? What demos are we not quite reaching through television? Where are the gaps that maybe we need to fill in? So you can look towards different kind of content through that way as well.
Is buying cheap video a client strategy, or is...
There can be, and it can be part of the funnel. You know, some clients only want to use TV at the upper funnel, and they only want to use digital for lower funnel media. And that...
Let's have everybody raise their hand who takes Reckitt Benckiser money. Go ahead, raise your hand.
Sellers, Reckitt Benckiser money?
I mean, I've just read they put a ton of money in, I don't work on the Reckitt Benckiser business, but they put a ton of money into the online video marketplace a couple of years ago, and were rumored to have been very, very focused on extremely low
Well, that's
prices.
a Zenith client there.
That's why no one in the room is accepting that.
Yeah, and well, and they were essentially okay with the fact that they might end up in environments that weren't necessarily the best environments at times.
And how did that work?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Again, it's
anyone know the
client
answer?
objectives. I mean, for some people, efficient media is a piece of the overall puzzle. There's platform buying out there where you can buy digital and display and video and mobile very efficiently. You know, it depends on what are you trying to drive acquisition. There's all kinds of, the client objective piece is really important, and the consumer experience and how they're experiencing this video is a huge piece of it, and it's not the same for every client.
It's actually an interesting segue opportunity here that I'll take into pricing. And there's, you know, as there's more integration of digital video with network video, there's some thought that the value of digital is being marginalized and being brought down to the broadcast level, that we can get into currencies here as well, but that the real value of performance-based opportunities in digital, if you go to more of a broadcasting cable-like market and try to get those dollars, that you're in fact diminishing your...
I think there's another play, though, that is shifting the pricing dynamics, and that has to do with RTB, real-time bidding, with trading desks, with ad exchanges, and as more video comes to those platforms, that's where we're going to see a lot of price erosion. I mean, that's what those platforms are about, is efficient media. For those of us who worked in digital in kind of 2002, 2003, do you remember when your remnant CPMs were still $6 or $7, and then MySpace and then Friendster came on the scene, and there was just this dump of inventory, and month by month your CPMs, because there was such a explosion in inventory, and your CPMs just dropped to $1 or, $1 or $2. So we will see that as more and more video comes to the trading desks and to the ad exchanges.
Yeah, I think you got to, when you think about price, and I know you want to get the currency too, which is a little different. You have to also think about there is a supply-demand dynamic to some degree. The television product, you know, they've been getting, I think, ridiculously high prices for their online video product, and I'm a big fan of seeing that TV everywhere may start to bring those prices down and make it more, like, I'll give you an example. I've been trying to convince clients to look at that online video product as an adjunct to their television buys for a long time. And we've done an online video upfront at Initiative as part of the upfront negotiation with our television partners for, you know, 3 or 4 years. And every one of those, I have probably about 25 active clients in national TV, and we get about 3 participants in the online video upfront per year. And sometimes it's a different 3 each time.
And do you mean going from ABC broadcast to ABC full episode player
That's,
online?
that's the only thing
exactly
I'm talking about. That's the only thing I'm talking about right now. Is that because a lot of clients who are not as, they're not as digitally focused, have not, and this, I'm talking 2 or 3 years ago, but they had not yet made the leap to realize that there are other tools in online video that you can use.
Because this makes me laugh, because what I say to customers is, I know the first place you go and the place you're most comfortable is full episode player. I've got, you know, full episode player windows in all my decks, as I say. I know you're comfortable here, but we got to get you.
They are comfortable there. They want to be there.
You're saying 3 out of 25 go there.
And I'll finish the story, and I'll explain what's going on. So each year we've had about 3 participants. When the CW and Fox started selling online video as part of their upfronts at television prices, each one of those networks has 15 clients out of our stable on their network. 13 out of 15 said yes in year 1. Okay? So
the key words there being at television prices, because
that's exactly what I'm saying.
And
What do you think the barrier was? They've been asking me for 10
demo
years,
guarantees.
what's the effectiveness of the medium? Prove it works the same as television. Not that comfortable with it. Blah, 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 blah. As soon as the price changed to television pricing, they all said, oh, I'm doing that, you know? So price has been a barrier to that full episode stuff. Now, they were getting those prices, arguably, because there isn't a whole hell of a lot of it to go around. So I like to see that, and it's growing, and Hulu was a big driver of
now ABC has announced they're coming out and selling at the same price.
Yeah, and we expect to see a lot of television networks go to that model. For the rest of video that's out there, I would argue that as negotiators and people that would be spending money, or our digital team spending that money, we are aware that the supply is increasing, or that there are large buckets of inventory that are not necessarily getting as monetized as they could in these other places. So even if we think that the content may be equal in terms of content, in terms of engagement, in terms of the performance it might drive, the price is not going to be the same. We don't have to do it. There's a lot of choices in that space.
Want to add to?
Yeah, we were in the same situation. As soon as the pricing model, you know, was the same as TV, where we could guarantee demo impressions at the television CPM, it was a much easier sell-through to our clients.
Now, at what point, if ever, going to Suzie's model from the early days of display with the collapse of more supply, as you introduce more supply into the video market, is there pressure put back on you to bring down the cost of the digital components of the broadcast inventory?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, and that's our intent.
And
that's your intent, to bring down the prices? Okay.
I think TV pricing is a good place to start.
It's the seller's intent to get the prices up as high as possible.
Well, you asked the question about value and cost, and I think that there's a difference between value and cost. Everyone, as we've talked a lot about client objectives and the experience we want the consumers to have with the content, we all need to think about on our clients what is the value of the different properties. But then there are certainly, those of us sitting up on this panel, our jobs are to be in the marketplace to determine the right cost. But cost value aren't always, they're not the same in this space, in the television space. It's not the same. There's a lot of things online video has the power to be able to do that we are actually pushing television to try to get to do too, that do provide value. So we'll have to think about when we're in the marketplace and we see all of that supply come in, well, how should it cost based on a supply-demand metric? How should it cost based on the fact that you can add this data overlay? Is there a premium data overlay? What type of premium? There's a lot of questions to be asked, And I think that's the benefit of, as our agencies are moving towards a structure where we are absolutely, and we've all said on this panel, partnered with our digital leads to work together to apply knowledge from both sets, to be subject matter experts, but make sure we all know the broad strokes of the medium so we can get and really tease out the value and pay the right cost for our clients.
There was some conversation yesterday about a single currency, GRP, you know, finding a single currency that cuts across all video media. Is that practical, and is it important? Maureen?
I think it can be important because that's how clients, as Chris said, you know, it's challenging to get clients to move away from TV. Clients are very comfortable with television. They like television, especially if you're a retail client, you're wireless. They're comfortable in those, yeah. You're comfortable in that space.
To compare.
So it's easy to compare, and they also have to understand, you know, they want to see what their reach frequency numbers are, and they want to see all that. So just from a sheer baseline perspective, we think it's necessary to start having those conversations about shifting money from TV to other platforms, just to start having those conversations. But obviously, you want to move much deeper than that if you're going to be doing online video. Clearly, it's not the answer. It's just, let's start the conversation. Let's kind of get that question out of the way with clients, because that can be a barrier to moving forward. And we've, you know, as Chris said, there has been challenges with getting clients to go in that direction, and you want to try to get them away from that conversation.
But you don't just want the evaluation to be a GRP. You don't want to be evaluating everything just on a GRP. There's value to mediums and the experiences and the interaction and the engagement and all these other things that need to come to the table. So it would be nice to have a basis of comparison to start at, but all these other things and the value of what each of the mediums
There isn't a single medium that a GRP is the same price in one part of the medium as it is in another. If you look at network television prime time is a different price than cable television is, because of the marketplace, because of the different value propositions, because of the engagement that you get, because of the association you get with the media brands, and because of a myriad of different factors. Print advertising, you add GRPs with print and television together too. I think there's a huge difference between a currency, right, and doing business on a certain metric. I would argue that, and I'm sure my digital leads would agree, there is no need to do business on GRP equations when there is an opportunity to go further and focus that deal closer on performance against certain KPIs. And we are pushing our television partners to do the same. There are a whole host of companies that we want to take those principles that have really come up through digital and push them into television. We would love to be buying television on a performance basis. So I don't think we're ever talking about, when we talk about potentially adding a GRP layer, what we're simply saying is, we're going to do the deals based on the deepest, most meaningful metric that you can do it on. And in digital, sometimes that's deeper than in other media, which is great. And hopefully in television, we're going to do the same thing. But there's also just kind of counting that gets done at a high level. And I don't see much reason why not to have a common counting metric.
You know, it's in your best interest to find the metrics that help you lower the cost of your media buying. It's in the seller's interest to find metrics that prove value. The cable industry has been trying for 3 decades to demonstrate that it has greater value than broadcast because of content, genre, better connectivity, lower inventory amounts, all kinds of reasons why cable should be more expensive than broadcast, yet broadcast prime time, except for sports, continues to get a significant premium, as much as 30 to 50% over some cable inventory. So how does the online video and marketplace, the digital video marketplace, avoid that same pure supply-demand reality?
Keep producing great quality content and get scale. The more audience there is, the more you avoid it. I mean, I don't know if they want to avoid it. It's a pretty good deal for the television networks. But more content, more original content is what we all want.
And I do think that buyers are willing to pay for things that have value. I mean, if we think back to cable in something that starts with 1990 something, where we were paying increases, they were very, very small increases in the television upfront for cable networks who were absolutely selling 30 to 40% of their inventory for the year. So supply and demand metrics weren't the only thing that governed that marketplace. We were investing in a medium for the future, and certainly the CPMs were really excessively low compared to television, and they were only going up a little bit. But we could have been paying almost nothing for certain cable networks, but that's not what was happening. There was value in what they were providing. They were bringing in an audience, they were bringing in a different point of view, and we were supporting that as an industry and paying for it.
I mean, there's certain networks in cable, like CNBC and Golf Channel, that have very targeted audiences that are hard to find, and we pay, you pay CPMs that are on the higher end because you can't find those audiences in every platform, and they're tough to find. So, I think you can find places that you'll pay the price if the audience is there that you're trying to reach.
Look at the individual shows within cable, those top-rated original shows. If you look at the CPMs on them, they're pretty significant and a lot of times comparable to a network television. So I don't think you can really look at all of cable, the vastness of cable and the amount of supply and GRPs at 0.1s or 0.2s and say that all of cable should be priced the same as all is prime time. I don't think that's a fair comparison.
So in that context, in your book, Stacey, you talk about social TV and layering in on top of the pure viewing experience, the social experience, and you talk about idea-based buying and selling and the importance of attaching the big idea or even the small ideas beyond just the pure media buying. And I know a lot of what you're doing, Suzie, is going into clients and agencies, but clients directly, and talking about the marketing opportunities that you offer. So as you all look at that from both the buyer and the seller point, how does the industry look at, one, the fact that sellers are going directly to your clients and talking about big ideas? We have creative people in the room who are talking about bringing ideas to the marketplace. How do you integrate, when you're looking for cost efficiencies for your clients and value for your clients, the marketing idea that may be outside of the purview of the media agency?
When we call on customers, which we do, I guess if you think about Nike, so it was stated recently that Nike's advertising investments have dropped 40% over the last 3 years, that they're spending less on television, radio, print, outdoor, even digital. They're not advertising, they're not branding. What they're doing is Nike Women's Marathon, they're investing in technology. They launched their Fuel Band. They're investing in a tremendous amount of viral video, which started with Ronaldinho kicking the soccer ball off the crossbar, to Kobe jumps over a car, to creating content. Right, so they're creating content. And technology, and the Write the Future campaign around the World Cup, and it's marketing activations. It's not advertising, and I think what we find when we go call on customers is they want to market. They want to, but Trevor Edwards from Nike was quoted as saying, we're not in the business of keeping media companies alive, we're in the business of connecting with our customers. So that's what our customers want from us. They want ideation, they want creativity, and often there has to be an idea that grounds it, and then we build the media on top of it, but the media is often a little secondary to the idea and is, it's audience that they're looking for.
They are, but they're also looking in the Nike example, or even some of the things that we've done, like with the Liberty Mutual Responsibility Project. We're talking about creating content that people are going to seek out, that they choose to go to, and the value of that, of a customer going and seeking out your content, is much greater in a lot of times than them just seeing your advertising message on TV or in print. So, we're trying to look at the value of trying to create these content opportunities for our clients so that people want to interact with the brand. And shifting dollars into that space is, I think, something you're going to see from a lot of clients. You're seeing content creation from a lot of different clients.
Is it different because, as you look at it, because Stacey's in a full-service agency where you're dealing on a day-to-day basis with the creative team?
Yeah, I don't think
we
so.
have, we were talking about communications planning, so comms planning, and a lot of our agencies where they're trying to figure out, whether it's, whatever, Denny's, Pizza Hut, what is that sort of central idea? What is the brand truth and the consumer truth? And how do we bring that to market? So everything is around making it great. An example case of Pizza Hut. So not that the media plan is built around making it great, and every show that we're in prime time is about making it great, but you build out sponsorships, or you build out marketing programs, you build out anything that's where we're going beyond a 30-second spot is around this notion of making it great. And that could be building custom content. It could be things that we've done in the Super Bowl or the NCAA. So there's a piece of your plan that's around these platforms and how you're going to go to market with your consumers. And that's, you know, like I said, a lot of agencies have communications planning that are at media agencies that we've built out to help clients bring
There's
that
a
to
lot of
market.
concern, though, on the part of sellers that the agencies are not as open to the idea.
Right. So I want to address that a little bit. Number one, I think it's television groups in particular, but I think now across most of the media, all of the investment groups have become, you sort of have two faces, right? Face number one, you've got to create these platforms that deliver on the communications objective, and you have to have a balance, right? You can't do that with 52 partners. You can do that with 4. And so those become sort of the pillars. And then but you also have to recognize that, and you know, these huge multinational marketers that have 30, 40 brands, and they are expecting you to grind the crap out of the media companies and find them efficiency versus marketplace inflation year in and year out. And you may be having one conversation with the CMO about creating these wonderful relationships with media companies. It's my favorite part of the job, excuse me. I'm in this business to create those relationships. That's what I love. If that ever goes away, I'll be out of this business. However, there is another part to this, which is those procurement departments are sitting there right next to the CMO, and they are basically saying the opposite. They're saying, go out and get me the efficiency. So what we have to do as the liaison between that client and the media partners is we have to do a very good job of educating the client on which partners we need to make strategic partners, and then where the rest of this sort of procurement-driven efficiency media is going to come. Because if you're going to hit these communication goals and deliver on the foot traffic into the stores, deliver on the brand goals, you are going to need a mix of those two things.
Right. But when you're talking about these media partnerships, and I know we hear this a lot on the agency side, is you need the buying and digital teams to work together.
Yep.
We need that same thing on the seller side too, that the television groups and the digital groups are working together and bringing us opportunities together, and that they understand what the role of each of those are. Because you look at it, and as we're looking at buying television and why a lot of these content experiences are being created, the C3 measurement that we use now in television is only telling us so much, right? It's only showing us people who are changing the channel and people who are fast forwarding, right? But we know there's another 40% of people that are distracted during commercial breaks. They have a secondary device. It's not being picked up by a C3 measurement. And so we need to understand what are these people doing during that time period, and how can we capture them so that our message is getting through in this multimedia environment. And that's where we need our media partners to come together, because they're doing a lot of different things. If they were all doing this, that 40% were all doing the same thing during that commercial break, well, that would be easy for us to figure it out. But they're not. They're on their email, or they're doing something with the companion content, or they're tweeting, or they're on their Facebook pages, or they're doing a lot of different things. And so when we're talking about these partnerships, we need for the sellers and their partners, you know, whether it be with GetGlue and Facebook and Twitter and the media partners and all of these groups that you're working with together to come to us so that we can evaluate these packages holistically. And that's the challenges we're facing right now. We're trying to work on the structures internally that we can evaluate and move them forward together, but also getting them on the sales side to come to us in a package that we can evaluate. And it's challenging, and we get that it's challenging, and you're not all working with the same partners, but I think that that will help us move it forward.
No, it's one thing to be dealing with Google and YouTube and the partners that you have in the newfronts, the big guys. When it comes to a lot of the mid-size and smaller players, they're relegated to dealing through the exchanges, the DSPs, the networks, and pushing price-based deals. What do you need from that group of sellers who want to somehow find a way to tap into and become a part of the idea-based ecosystem, the relationship ecosystem?
The only way you're going to be a part of the idea-driven ecosystem is, I think you have to have one of two things. You have to have a completely unique and unmatchable performance opportunity. You know, which again may not even fall in the idea-based area, but it may create a premium for your product. So if you have something no one else can offer, and you can prove that out very, very dramatically, to your agency partners. That's one way. The other way, and the way that most of the media that we do business with that are those strategic partners, is that they invest tremendously in content that resonates with a certain key segment of America, or a very large segment of America. These big pillars, these media brands, clients and brands, marketers get a tremendous amount of equity that they can draft off of when they are attached to, American Idol, when they are attached to specific passion points, that a holistic marketing plan can be built across multiple channels. But if you don't have one of those assets, I don't see much chance that you're going to get yourself out of the, I mean, you may move beyond exchanges, but I don't see, there isn't a reason to, because there's more choices out there.
Any differentiation, any difference there?
There has to be value. There has to be a value that you can get in buying it directly versus buying it through the exchange.
We're going to go to the audience for questions. I think we have some mics, so if you could just put your hand up and we'll come to you.
There's one over here, Jack.
And as if you could, when you ask the question, tell us your name, your company, no sales pitches, please, and keep your question to a short core question without a statement as you can. Go ahead.
God, so much pressure. Jonathan Taves, Scarlet Strategic.
Tell us that again.
Jonathan Taves, Scarlet Strategic.
That was a sales pitch, I think, Jack.
I'm Mr. Brown from the company. We talk a lot about Jackie was talking about the tools that you're now moving into digital out of home, all those types of things. Shelley's talked earlier about that. We haven't really talked about the consumer side and how they're engaged with, and sort of putting you on the spot, looking at opportunities that you're just waiting for the right idea that you can match with that opportunity. Do you see anything, whether it's a platform, a vertical category, whatever, that you're just really chopping at the bit to be able to activate a program with that you really think would be a great new way to engage with the consumer using video?
That is a pretty open-ended question, but I'll pick one subject. The idea of being able to amplify, and I'm coming from a traditional side, the idea of being able to amplify a traditional partnership. For example, creating a social strategy around one of those partnerships that you may have with a television network that is using partners that are not associated with that television network. So a social strategy using multiple partners, third-party partners. Video companies can get into that game too by proving out through, I think, a lot of data that they can add, you can add audience reach, you can add distribution capability for custom content that's developed around those partnerships as well. So it's kind of like, hey, we know you're creating these strategic partners with these big media partners that have scale, that have, that resonate with the consumer, but we can help you amplify that in a way that network will never be able to do. We have much more scale out here that we can add to the picture. And I know, some of the social companies have a lot of ideas on that. I haven't seen as many on the video companies, except the guys that are, partnering up with Nielsen and set-top box companies to add reach to television buys, which is kind of an interesting play as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think social media is just, we would love to do more in that space. That's something that we want to find the right idea to activate out there, because there's so much engagement that we're going to be able to get from that, and bring that reach of television combined with social, I think is really powerful. So I think that's definitely an area we'd love to exploit more.
Yeah, I was going to say in your question on video and the video space, I'm really curious to sort of see where some of like Xbox's Kinect technology goes, and being able to interact easier on the primary screen. A lot of interactive television through the remote control has been a little clumsy, and it's there. There hasn't been huge innovation there, but I think now with a lot of the technologies, there's going to be some interesting ways to interact with video on the television screen. So I'd like to sort of see where that space goes and the technology there.
Says the author of Social TV.
Yeah.
Jack, I'm going to actually take a little executive privilege and ask the panel one quick question, then we have two other questions out here. To everybody on the panel, any way you want to answer it. How important, we know that currency, we've you talked about currencies being different, and they are different, and a common currency doesn't exist anywhere in the media business. How important in your daily life right now is the fact that no two numbers from two different sources ever match, ever, on anything, ever? And how would we solve that problem, or what would make your lives easier? Could we have common measurement? If so, how do you solve for that, and how much is it torturing you based on your normal day right now?
It's funny because we did this analysis right after the Super Bowl and who was ranking the commercials on who won, right? And if you looked at Mashable, Brand Bowl, all the different rankings, they all had a different number one, right? And so we had a panel at our Hill Holiday event, and we said, you know, who are we supposed to believe, right? Everybody's got a different number one. Well, everybody is trying to differentiate themselves in the measurement space right now, right? You have Bluefin and Trender and Social Guide and Network Insights and all of these companies coming out there, and they're all trying to survive. And they all are looking at data a little differently. And from a common currency, you know, I think from our standpoint, it's okay that they're all different. I think we need to widen our inputs as we're evaluating everything to begin with. You know, we've looked and used Nielsen and MRI and Simmons for so long as how we've evaluated networks and programs, and now we have more data about how people are talking about television. And I don't know that there has to be a single one. I don't mind having a lot of different inputs, and that they're different as long as we understand the methodology and the methodology is sound. I think we can have a variety of inputs impacting how we're measuring it.
Shelley, you're not asking me this question, you're asking them, but it's like measuring your children by the same standard. I mean, the mediums are different, the vehicles are different.
So, but are you saying...
I'll take the same medium.
Yeah, you're saying digital video,
Show me 5
right?
websites that look the same for 5 different people.
So I would argue, I don't, because I've been tangentially involved in the digital industry, and I've had a lot of contacts in the industry, and I've been involved with video discussions for a long time. I'm a little shocked that the industry did not, at the very, very beginning, coalesce around a certain delivery mechanism that could actually be consistent across. You just got all these different players that popped up, and you have different websites using different players, and there's verification companies all over the place. You know, the wireless industry, you know how they all kind of went with either GSM or CDMA. Like, why the hell didn't they all just go GSM? I have no idea why that was the case. You probably do,
that requires a bottle of scotch and several more
right.
cigars. But the question is, how do you guys deal with it
now?
Like,
we all have issues with Nielsen.
And let's
but
go
I'm
to
asking
the
the question.
other.
Just quickly, anybody,
Yeah.
how do you care that there's no common measurement? And if so, do we need to strive for one? That's the question.
The other piece that we haven't even talked about is that our clients all have a different set of measurements too, right? Like the big windmill that we're going to keep tipping up against is that clients have their own market mix modeling, and some of their market mix models are really sophisticated and great and can take into account new media, and some can't, right? And they don't support the new media choices. So on top of how we buy it, or even what we buy, we have that factor to deal with that isn't built on a common currency either. So it would be great, I think, to have a better way to compare things across platforms, but I just don't see that that's coming anytime soon.
Let's get to, we had another question here, Gian.
Gian Lombardi from Yumi. So it was interesting to hear that once the full episode player prices reached parity with television, you got a lot more clients on board. But then I also heard a comment on value versus cost. And across hundreds of Nielsen IAG brand studies, I've consistently seen the online video impression outperform the TV impression from an attitudinal lift standpoint. Now, whether it's showing up in the media mix models, I think will vary by client, but is there any traction in your conversations with your clients on accepting that the online impression might deliver more value than the TV impression, particularly in light of Stacy's comments on distraction media while watching TV?
When I try to convince clients that they need to be thinking about video beyond television, I bring this sort of 15-page PowerPoint deck that is sort of an aggregation of the 7 or 8 or 9 different studies that have been done over the past 5 years that talk about higher brand recall, higher attention levels, fewer distractions. And I'll clarify, I think the distraction thing and the engagement is more of an on-demand characteristic than it is an online characteristic. When somebody watches a television show or any show in DVR playback or on cable video on demand, they've taken the moment to choose to watch that show and are way more likely to have done that at a time where they're not going to be as distracted as they would be with live television viewing, right? So online, it's really on demand. And so we're making the case that it's more valuable. We've been making the case that it's more valuable for years. One of the struggles we had was that all those numbers say that the environment is, depending on the study, 25, 30, 50% more valuable, or better, 50% better results. But the price was always 2 or 3 times the television price. So it didn't compute, and that's why we had 3 clients in the online video upfront. The TV pricing makes it more of a no-brainer for them because it feels like it's a better deal. But the online video medium in itself is as valuable as it may be and as engaged a medium as it may be. It still is not a sold-out medium when you add all the players together. So that's going to factor into the price that clients will want to pay for the
Supply and demand is still the driving force in
some
the
degree.
business. We had another question. Yeah.
Yeah, Amy Bartle with La Quinta Inns and Suites. And as a client, I am ready, willing, and able to open my checkbook. And by the way, I do both sides of the media house, so I'm not fighting for budget. I got it all. To reach and extend to my particular target. My challenge is that as much as they're not perfect, and I'm not CPG, I'm not retail, I'm travel. So I need people who've identified not only to travel, but to my travel space. MRI Simmons aren't perfect, but I can programmatically buy my broadcast to people who have self-identified that they use my category. I can't do that anywhere in the online video space. If I could get a buy that said, here's your guy, he watches this on TV, he watches this on the iPad, he watches this, I'd buy it all. How long before we can get there?
So at Starcom, I don't have a specific answer to you about comparing something that would be the digital MRI. But at Starcom, one of the things we're working on is we're trying to pull back a step and saying, what is the La Quinta consumer thinking and what emotional mindset are they in when they're going to go consume media? And once we figure that out, we've done a lot of study to determine what media sources and what media choices they're making across platforms. So we could start to proxy and say, we know that they're doing this on television, and based on that mindset, we know that these are the types of places they're going to go online, and these are the types of things that they can do online. So we are trying to step back and think about what is that experience the consumer's having, because that can be global across medium.
So I'm a little confused. Isn't there a ton of data online available about behavior and about what websites they've visited, what actions they've taken?
She means on TV,
I think that
marrying back to TV.
I think that there is. I mean, one of the
Marrying it
things
back to television?
that we've not marrying back to
Does
television.
it have to be married back to television? Yeah, I think it needs to be a different slicing and dicing of the data.
So I'm going to, we're out of time. I think there are answers to those questions. There are a lot more questions, I know. I'm going to put you each on the spot in this audience and ask you in closing just to give me your email address and to give your audience or how they can best reach you and communicate with you, or your Twitter handle, something, your Facebook, how you can best be contacted if they have follow-up questions for you or want to reach out to you.
Chris.Magel@us.initiative.com.
I need more Twitter followers, so please follow me on Twitter at.
What's the value of those followers?
I think they're pretty valuable. Yeah, I love Twitter.
You need a clout score?
It's at Maureen Boss, B-O-S-S.
Jackie.Kulesza@starcomww.com.
And my Twitter handle is @BOSMediaContent.
2 bosses.
That's funny.
Only one S.
S. Reider, R-E-I-D-E-R @google.com. S. Reider.
and Jack Myers.com, at Jack Myers.com.
With no E before the Y.
Yes, M-Y, thank you.
Can I ask Shelley Palmer publicly, iPad or Kindle Fire? What's your preference? Come on, baby. I've been wanting to ask you this question, in person for
So it's a really simple answer. Whatever you prefer.
Oh. You're calling bullshit on all the panels.
Yeah.
Okay, Kindle Fire, if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, and you have to carry a laptop,
That's
which
a
I
good
do,
answer.
MacBook Air. If you don't carry a laptop with you or think that you're not so cool that you need a laptop, the new iPad in 4G, Verizon only, rocks my world.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to this panel. You've been great. Good audience.
Let's give it up for Jack Myers and the panel. Thank you guys so much.